Good morning, members of Parliament, support staff, radio listeners, TV viewers, those viewing via social media, and members of the media. Welcome to the continuation of this urgent public meeting number 21 of today, Friday, September 2nd, 2022. I would like to give a special welcome to the Prime Minister and Minister of General Affairs, Ms. Sylvia Jacobs, and their support staff present here today. We've established a quorum of 10 members of Parliament. Please let's stand for a moment of silence. I've received notice of absence from MP William Marlin. Is there any member of Parliament that wishes to have the floor today for notifications? MP Christophe Emmanuel.
Good morning, Madam Chair Lady. Good morning to my colleagues, the honorable ministers and their support staff and the people of St. Martin. Good morning. Madam Chair Lady, I've taken notice of, how should I put it? I don't know if it's a lack of respect or simply have no regards for Parliament. Well, Madam Chair Lady, I have to direct this to the President of Parliament because we have requested information from the government for a urgent public meeting today. Documents, Madam Chair, I've said it once, I've said it twice, I've said it 3 times. The Prime Minister is here, the Minister of Rummy is here, Madam Chair Lady. And to this date, knowing that we have this meeting today, we still haven't received those documents pertaining to the tendering of the garbage contract. And not only didn't we haven't received these documents, we haven't received word whether, you know, it's late, they're working on it, it's nothing. We haven't received absolutely nothing, Madam Chair Lady. And, you know, the ministers sort of shrugged a bit when we request them to come to Parliament on short notice and how much time they should have left and when they should come. But Madam Chair, where's the reciprocity? Now we have requested documents and we haven't received nothing. I haven't even heard nothing back from the Secretariat, from the Khifid, and we even have the Secretariat of the government here, Madam Chair Lady. And at this point, not one word pertaining to those documents. So I would like to ask through you, Madam Chair, seeing that we have the Minister of Rummy here, the Prime Minister here, and the Secretariat, are we going to receive those documents today in a timely manner for the meeting later on this afternoon? Thank you very much.
Thank you, MP Emmanuel, for your question.
Madam Chair, sorry.
Yes? And MP Pontiflet, you would like to have the floor?
Morning to the Chair, my colleagues in Parliament, Honourable Prime Minister and Minister of Rummy, those that are viewing and listening. Madam Chair, I'm seeing that there's a fine line between notification and point of order and so on, Madam Chair. I got to be clear because the fact is, listening to the colleague, I'm hearing about questions that were posed and answers not provided. That's what you get, Madam Chair, when you want to call urgent meetings within a short period of time, and the same civil servants who have to answer the questions, work with the country packages, and at the same time, Madam Chair, do their regular work. So, Madam Chair, it takes time. So I'm saying, Madam Chair, is it notification, or it is a first round or 1 round and a half that is happening right now, Madam Chair? Thank you very much.
Thank you, MP Pontiflet. Is there any other member of Parliament that would like to have the floor for notifications? I see no need. I will address both of your statements, and I can only say at this moment, Parliament has forwarded your request over to government, and on one or many more than one occasion, we have verbally asked the status of said documents, and once we have received it, that's the only time we are able to inform you that we received it. We have the presence of the Prime Minister here and the Minister. Maybe they can maybe elucidate a little bit with that, but before in their opening remarks. Yes? So with that, if there's no more notifications, I'd like to go over to the agenda point for this public meeting. and that is that recent developments that impact the liquidity of the utility company and the ability of NVGEBE to continue as a going concern. This can be found under incoming document 1189, Parliamentary Year 2021 to 2022, dated August 15th, 2022. This meeting was requested by MP Ludmila de Weever, MP Melissa Gumbs, MP Sarah Wescot-Williams, and MP Christophe Emmanuel. We go over to the agenda point. Parliament received a letter under incoming document 1189 on August 15, 2022 from MP de Weever, MP Gumbs, MP Wescot-Williams, and MP Emmanuel that requested at an urgent public meeting of Parliament to convene with the above-mentioned agenda point. The presence of the the presence of the Prime Minister and the Minister of Public Housing, Spatial Planning, Environment and Infrastructure was also requested for this meeting. This meeting started on August 24, 2022, and the meeting adjourned after the Prime Minister gave her opening remarks and three speakers on the speakers list, MP Wescot-Williams, MP Gumbs, and MP Emmanuel, posed their questions to the Honourable Minister of General Affairs, Ms. Sylvia Jacobs, which was then present. The meeting then adjourned at 12:36 p.m. to allow the Honourable Prime Minister time to attend a previous appointment. The speakers list remained open for other members of Parliament who wished to speak on the agenda point. The meeting was reconvened on August 26, 2022, during which other members of Parliament were then added to the speakers list, namely MP Solange Duncan, MP Ludmila de Weever, MP Angelique Rameau, MP George Pantaflet, MP Rolando Bryson, MP Rayon Peterson, and MP Hyacinth Richardson. Upon request of the Honourable Minister of General Affairs, the meeting was then adjourned to allow the Prime Minister time to indicate how long it would take to answer the questions posed in the first round. The meeting was then reconvened for some remarks and a PowerPoint presentation from the Prime Minister. This PowerPoint presentation is booked in Parliament under incoming document 1240, Parliamentary Year 2021-2022, dated August 26, 2022. The PowerPoint presentation gives an outline of NVGEBE, its shareholders, its corporate structure, its articles of incorporation, Parliament, facts, and requests from NVGEBE's shareholders to NVGEBE Board of Directors. After the PowerPoint presentation, the meeting was then adjourned to allow the Prime Minister time to prepare the answers to the questions posed by the members of Parliament in the first round, hence the continuation meeting of today. The Prime Minister, Sylvia Jacobs, is here present to provide the answers posed by the members of Parliament. I will now give the floor to the Honourable Prime Minister, Ms. Sylvia Jacobs, for opening remarks and answers to the questions posed by members of Parliament. Prime Minister, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair Lady. Good morning. Good morning to you, Madam Chair Lady, the Griffier, the honourable members of Parliament. Good morning to my colleague Minister, our support staff, Mr. Bosman of the Board of Supervisory Board of NVGEBE, persons in the Tribune and other support staff who are following this meeting. Good morning, of course, to the people of St. Martin. A blessed Friday to one and all, continuous safety and blessings. Madam Chair Lady, through you to the honourable members of Parliament, I'd like to thank you for allowing us the time, though still short, to be able to procure answers and return today, September 2nd, instead of Wednesday, to provide answers to the members of Parliament and by extension, the people of St. Martin. Madam Chair Lady, with everything going on, I must say, were not able to finalize all the questions. Due diligence is required for quite a number of them, seeing the situation and ensuring that we give accurate information to the members of Parliament and by extension the people, especially seeing that we are in the midst of a crisis that is ongoing. Madam Chair, I felt it prudent, nevertheless, to return here Also seeing that there are several meetings scheduled today, and so the expectation for this meeting could not go further than a particular time. So I trust that the answers that I do have would be able to take up that allotted time. I do, of course, pledge to return as soon as possible with the rest of the answers to be able to answer these. But I believe, given the fact that it is information that is to be received from a third party, being the public company GEBE, and it is very technical information that needs to be properly vetted, that reasonable time should be allowed for such. Also, Madam Chair Lady, the fact that some of this information is highly confidential, we need to ascertain the correct manner in which this can be shared. And as I mentioned before, that confidential corporate information has to be decided in a general shareholders meeting as to what can be shared and how with third parties, including Parliament, and how, because of course we have the confidential route of Parliament as well. I'd like to also thank, Madam Chair, the members of NVGEB staff for the hard work that they have had to put in throughout this crisis, as well as in executing their daily task, and now, over the past week, in being able to respond to the questions that have been posed. Thank you. Your hard work does not go unnoticed. Also, lots of time and energy had to be expended by the Supervisory Board of Directors, who I'm sure when they signed on didn't expect that it would be a job that required sometimes daily and a lot of midnight oil to be burned. Thank you also. It is a great responsibility, and I trust we see a way forward in resolving the many issues. The shareholder, Madam Chair, has outlined during my opening statement, which I presented on Friday, about the relationship between Parliament, government, and NVGB. And the Council of Ministers has taken several decisions, key decisions, to address this crisis as the sole shareholder of the company. Madam Chair, safeguarding the livelihood of this government-owned company is and has always been a priority for government. As I continue to analyze the many documents and review the information provided by NVGEBE, especially what was provided during the shareholders meeting on the 19th, or just leading up to that, and subsequently, I must say that a lot of, let's say, interpretation of said reports still need to take place. I also hear the cry of the people as the clients of the company and the ones that would be heavily impacted, as well as the employees. And we must safeguard this in order to ensure economic growth and sustainability for all. As such, Madam Chair, we have requested an independent crisis team be appointed to carry out investigations to be able to verify the actions taken post the hack. And we look forward to being able to inform as to when that team has been created or put together, what their parameters will be, the reporting, as well as the protocols as it regards to information being disseminated. During the last 2 weeks, Madam Chair, a lot has transpired, documents shared, and though they had been requested earlier, I must say, quite a lot was said about the slew of documents I mentioned, but indeed it is a lot, and it continues to come in. Hindsight is always 20/20, but no one expects that as a shareholder, you are in the day-to-day operations of any government-owned company, and as such, I ask your indulgence to be able to transcribe said information also with the proper vetting from an IT as well as legal perspective of all the information that has come in. During said meetings, we've also highlighted that communication and protocols need to be adjusted when there's a crisis, and we cannot continue in the same manner and following all the exact rules. In fact, one of the key statements that came up was note, break, vet. Urgency allows for deviation from certain rules, regulation, and laws. And so we will keep that in the back of our minds as I share some information. As I go into the answers that I can provide at this time, Madam Chair, I ask your indulgence and that of Parliament for the fact that some answers are of a confidential nature, and we will have to discuss moving forward how to be able to disseminate those, as I mentioned before. And I will start with the answers as have been asked by the members of Parliament in the order as they were recorded. Of course, taking note that if I have mentioned that it's confidential and it is noted that a question was missed, that the respective member would indicate such. Also taking into consideration, Madam Chair, that as representative of the Council of Ministers and shareholder, I am reliant upon NVGEBE to supply me with answers. As such, I will indicate if I am not able to corroborate the validity or the accuracy of said information. I will start with the questions from MP Sarah Wescot-Williams, who asked in her first question for a breakdown of the documentation that was received in that first week of August, as had been mentioned by my person. On August 2nd, Madam Chair, we received from NVGEBE a statement of position, a status update by temporary manager, Ms. Daniel. This included a whole overview of events post the hack. It described the plan of action A and B. It gave an update on report from Aurora Tech Info, Aurora Infotech, and overview of the early accomplishments, information on the IT department, financial challenges, as well as a proposed plan with a timeline to address some of these challenges. Another document was the draft Aurora Infotech report dated May 24th, and a memo regarding an agreement with Aurora Infotech. Take note that I've said a draft report, Madam Chair. We also received a memo related to manual transactions from Deloitte that was issued to the company based on the shareholders' request for them to start doing transactions with the public, cash transactions, as a large segment of the community is solely reliant on that type of transaction, and to which we got a negative response. And then at this point, this memo was shared by Deloitte. This memo was dated July 11th and shared with us on August 2nd. Also included in that, in those groups of information or documents sent, were memos from the temporary management to the management of GEBE, so the managers internally, regarding an overview of pending projects that was requested to be sent in and cost-cutting measures. Also, a response to report and letter to the OM regarding the bestuurlijke rapportage. There was also a statement from Mr. Temmer of the position on the IT, as well as the bestuurlijke rapportage. Emails, email trail, a whole going backwards between the internal audit department and management. Also an email trail between the COO at the time and the audits related to the audits done on IT, and all audit plans from 2014 to 2022. I think you can concur with me that that is indeed a slew of documents. Question 2, what is the present situation with respect to the billing at NVGEBE? The MP was rightfully concerned about all the different stories that were being mentioned, cases that we're hearing about, and queried the truth about it. A presentation was made to the shareholder in which percentages were quoted as to how many persons had been billed then another percentage as to how many were accurately billed. A whole breakdown was given as to where they were at the time, August 19, in the cycle of billing, and that by the following week, another group would have received their bills, etc. And in requesting the further elucidation to be presented here today accurately, this was not given. I have no corroboration on the information that was submitted August 19th, but a number was thrown out, and I heard the numbers thrown out again via the interview yesterday, in that some amount like 76% of the population was billed, so that means 24% was not. This is according to the documents provided on the presentation on August 19th. 76% of that 86% was accurately billed. I cannot corroborate that. The 14% was being dealt with in the sense of them getting the updated bills. Those are the numbers that I've heard them so often now, they come off the top of my head, Madam Chair Lady, but I have not received any substantiating documentation to prove such. As such, in our deliberations in preparation for this meeting, I asked not just for the updated information, but even a proper graphic to be able to show the members of Parliament. And should I receive this before the end of this round, then I will definitely share it with you. As far as the billing is concerned, and I might end up answering other questions when I say this, that come down later on in the row, but this was one of the main reasons that the shareholder found the press statements put out about have you received your bill, especially I believe category A, and probably also B, that you would have to pay your entire bill by the 1st of September or be cut. We found that to be erroneous to put out in the media and was a cause of much consternation in the public. We asked it, requested respectfully, staying in our lane, the company to ensure that proper communication went out so that there would be no confusion. Because as a matter of fact, based on the person sitting in the room, which is the Council of Ministers, the Supervisory Board, and the management, not one person could say in the room that they had received accurate bills at that time, on the 19th of August. So how in heaven's name then could you proceed in this manner? We also admonished as to why communication had not kept up since June when the first glitches came out, and the reasons given were being busy with other things, having challenges with communications internally. The verification of all that information, Madam Chair, members of Parliament, people of St. Martin, still needs to take place. On Wednesday before coming out to the meeting that was scheduled here in Parliament, this is now 3 days after our general shareholders meeting, daily requesting, where's the information to the public, where's the information to the public, where's the information to the public. The management held their course with their strategy to ensure rapid collection of funds which had not been collected over 4 to 5 months. I will leave that there for now, Madam Chair, but suffice it to say that there are not sufficient information, there is not sufficient information provided to the shareholder for me to be able to give an accurate account as to how many persons were actually billed, how many billed accurately, and what is being done to mitigate or bring that up to par. What I can say is that they had expected that by the end of September, they would have caught up. Question 3, where do we stand with all of the different things. Some statements were made prior about questions asked during question hour, etc. Since the hack in March of this year, where do we stand with the strategic plan was one question. It was said by then that it is in the make. Where is it? During that meeting in March, Mr. Temer stated that the incoming board, managing board, will be working on a new strategic plan. However, as you know, he is the only appointed managing director at this time, and since then has been dealing with the hack. So no work has been done on the strategic plan from March to now. What I can say though is that there are several draft strategic plans by former management, which of course will need to be reviewed to see what is still workable, especially seeing that we have experienced not just this hack, but also a pandemic. So this is something that will be dealt with. So as to whether that has been worked on in the meantime, no. The current financial situation of GEBE. The last information regarding the financial statements was of 31st of March, 2021. From NVGEBE, the forecast of GB's cash position shows that its cash in the next 4 months or 2 to 4 months is achieving critical levels. I think that had already been established in the press statement of the temporary manager, and that only when GEBE manages to recover from the operational effects of the ransomware attack and get billing and collection back to normal, which they project to be by the end of September 2022, will they have the required cash flow to be able to say they are continuing operations as per normal through the hurricane season. Currently, they are maintaining the minimum amount needed for the hurricane season and have been able to receive some assurances from the bank, etc., to be able to proceed with some key payments needed for vendors. This was secured just yesterday, so that is not in my notes, but updated based on the going concern and receiving up-to-date reports on this. The TM also updated that a financial impact study had been carried out and received by management yesterday and sent to the supervisory board of directors. However, to date, the shareholder has not been made privy to this information. What are the receivables? Where do things stand today? Again, given what has transpired. As far as GEBE answer provided, considering the different building blocks required to ensure that the current receivable balance is accurate, they would like to answer this specific question once all invoices, payments, open items, and write-offs have been processed. In further elucidation, when I asked Madam Chair Lady, members of Parliament, the temporary manager explained, and other managers that had been in the call, that the receivables, so GEBE at least has it in their system now what their receivables are. So for those whose accounts are up to order, and I must say, on the 19th, I wasn't able to access what I owe GEBE, let's say, but last evening, when I checked, I was able to go on the portal and see all of my bills from March to now that are available. I believe March, April, May, June. Yes, and what payments I have made. So I am able to now see a balance on my portal, and so any one of the persons that have been quote unquote accurately billed who have not gone into dispute whatever this bill may be, would be able, if they are registered on the portal, to just go in there and see it without having to travel to NVGEBE, stand in a line, or any of that. So that much I can say is an improvement over the 19th of August to now, and in fact, a couple of days ago. So I think even 2 to 3 days ago, that information wasn't visible to me. So they continue to make strides in becoming current, and so they know what their receivables are, they know what is owed to them from all their vendors. Of course, if there are inaccuracies, I encourage the people of St. Martin to ensure you take up contact, whether by phone, email, or in person, to rectify that. And if it was not that the MP was asking about in terms of receivables, then clarification can be requested. Question 4, related to the water company, where do we stand with this water contract and the take or pay? Where does the MP asks, where does that stand now, since it was going to be looked at? Where does the strategic plan stand, since it was in the make? But I think I answered on the strategic plan already. The water contract, as far as GEBE has updated the shareholder, is being handled by the Ministry of VSR, whom was in discussions with Seven Seas Water. The water production contract is between the government of St. Martin and Seven Seas Water, and not with NVGEBE. The take or pay has not changed to date. It remains what it was since the last contract was signed. It is an average, on average, 18,500 tons per day, and for the past, 6 months of the year, it is at 20,000 tons. Those are the months of January, February, March, April, July, and December. And the other months, 17,000. So that's why they average it out at 18.5. The latter is an amendment that was made to Addenda 2 and 2A to the water supply contract, water supply agreement of 2008 in Article 2B, sub 2, signed by, at that time, the then Ministry of VROMI, VSR, and Airfin Holding Seven Seas Water. So that was not in 2008, that's when it was established. You have the date of the last amendment, 2018. I believe, and I stand to be corrected because we did ask that, the last addenda was signed in 2018. Thank you. Where do we stand today with respect to water storage capacity, which was 30,000 tons before Hurricane Irma? In this hurricane season, where do we stand with that? The answer I received from NVGEBE is that before Hurricane Irma, the total operational water storage capacity was 31,273, so just over 30,000. And as of August 2022, the storage capacity is at 29,498 cubic meters or tons, including the lowlands tank, which is not yet operational, so including the water that is in there. The budget for GEBE 2022 is there, an approved 2022 budget. According to the answers received from NVGEBE, the budget was approved for 2022, was approved by the Supervisory Board of Directors on June 16th, 2022. The status of the new building, that project is part of the pending strategic business plan. However, the execution of said plan is subject to the successful restoration of the operations following the Black Bite ransomware event dated March 17th. And as referenced under question 2, this will be adjusted pending the appointment of another statutory director. GEBE also spoke about an energy policy. Has government, like it said, updated its existing energy policy? I believe I updated on this previously, probably not here in Parliament. However, there is a work group established between government, GEBE, and other stakeholders who are updating, I believe is a 2014 energy policy, of course, to be in line with achieving our sustainable and renewable energy goals. So this is ongoing, and GEBE, though for a period of time with change of management, etc., lapsed in their participation in this policy work group, has since rejoined and is an active participant. 9, which are, if any, the annual audits since the ones that were provided to Parliament from 2019. Are there any follow-up or following annual audits and information to share? Based on information received from NVGEBE, I must respond in the negative. The last completed financial statement audit refers to the year end December 31st, 2019, which was provided to Parliament as mentioned. The financial auditors are currently executing the audit for the year ending December 31st, 2020, so that is in the process to be finalized. The 2019 internal audit plan was delayed due to the terms of reference, which was executed to hire a new auditor. Oh, right. I have it in notes in my answers. The 5-year term of having an auditor service the government-owned company had run out, and so a terms of reference was made to hire a new auditor, which resulted in Deloitte joining the fold. However, some time elapsed whereby they weren't able to finalize whatever had to be done in that year. So they are currently finalizing the 2020 financials. However, I have it also from reliable sources, not necessarily verified by NVGEBE, that prior to that there was a 10-year audit plan in place from Grant Thornton, which is the previous external auditors. However, this was not confirmed, nor have I received said audit plan, which is key to being able to hold the auditors of NVGEB accountable, as the recommendations of such an audit plan, which would have been comprehensive, would have been basically the roadmap for which the internal audit department could be held accountable. So it was, I believe, issued by the BDO, and I will be looking forward to receiving such to be able to even further elucidate on some of the other questions that had been asked, Madam Chair, because quite a few questions had been asked about the auditing done by the internal affairs, the internal audit department. The Honorable MP, in her revision of answers provided in previous meetings on NVGB, question, what does such a plan, well, the same auditing plan entail, and what does this internal audit plan encompass? So I think in terms of the yearly audit plans the member was referring to. So based on the information we received, I can inform that based on their statements, the internal audit department is executing audit assignment based on their internal plans, which is annually approved by the Supervisory Board of Directors Audit Committee. Amongst others, the audit plan for 2022 includes the one that they are currently carrying out, information technology audit. This has been outsourced via a tender and should be completing soon, I believe for November, to be implemented. Meter readings and revenue processes and financial management processes. These are the 3 areas of the 2022 audit plan. We saw recently a statement regarding streetlights. The question is, where does GEBE and government stand in the execution of the streetlight projects on the basis of management agreements? Are both parties living up to the agreement? NVGB has complied to the contractual agreement with respect to the visual inspection and the change out of the streetlights in accordance with the Streetlight Management Agreement, Article 6, signed on 11th of February 2021 between GEBE and the Ministry of Romy. Upon request of the Ministry of Romy, NVGEB executes new extension projects on roads where there may be no streetlights installed, and this is as per Article 7 of the agreement. The streetlight management agreement has a 4-year term, and I'm happy to report that as per the contract, not only has government supported the light swap of about 200 private requests, 200, so they have a budget of 500 for a certain part of the project and 200 for private for private requests. And for this year already, the 200 has been done. It's already been done, swapped out. So that would be for the older lights to LED. And then from the 500 supply, that is yearly budgeted for, street lights have been brought to areas such as GEBE, several roads in GEBE. I think Venus Drive was mentioned by the department head, areas in Bel Air, and another district I can't remember. However, since the situation with the liquidity issues GEBE is facing, that they have been temporarily halted. And as far as I was informed, they are living up to their agreements. Given what we have today, is there in the budget 22 still the amount of $500,000 guilders for senior relief? Of course, the forecast of GEBE's cash position shows that they, as I mentioned before, are currently at critical between now and the next 2 to 4 months, unless things, well, they projected to turn around in the month of September, but currently a bit critical, and requiring billing and collection to get back to normal. They have chosen to reschedule the senior relief program. I have not been able to ascertain, as the answer does not refer to the budget, whether it is still on the budget or not. But I think what GEBE, and again, wasn't able to verify that though it may be on the budget, liquidity is an issue at the moment. We will be following up with this question, as of course, giving the seniors a much needed relief is something that this government has promoted from the onset. So this is a follow-up question that I need to verify. In March of 2021, the member mentions that we learned that the receivables were around 46 million. Where does that stand today? I do not have an accurate figure as to what the receivables are, though GEBE confirms that they are aware of the receivables. This was in, of course, the update meeting to ascertain the accuracy of the answers provided yesterday. And so follow-up information was requested to prove this. So whether it is the projections that were made from, I'm not going to say which reputable firm, but they mentioned a reputable firm that has that information or presented them that information, and we are still pending to receive that. So again, this is one point, Madam Chair, which for the record, I really need to get more corroborating evidence to be able to respond accurately. That is question 13. Question 14, the cash position of February 2021 was at 50 million guilders. Where does that stand today? In the presentation made to government, again, this is quite confidential. As I mentioned a bit earlier, they require at least the 30 million in reserves. They still are above that, but based on definitely below the 50 million guilders, and therefore concerned to ensure that they receive the receivables owed to be able to stay above that, to be able to sustain during a hurricane, as well as GEBE's needed operational expenses. Should Parliament want more specifics, this would definitely have to come under the decision of the shareholders meeting to present such and then only within closed doors or ter inzage for the members. I go now to the questions of MP Melissa Gumbs. Why was an IT audit not carried out at NVGEBE? Common practice is to contract external assistance if in-house expertise is not available. Why was this not done? If the same individual has been head of internal audit since 2013 and thus responsible for ensuring the audit of all departments of the company. Oh, why was this not done if the same person has been of the internal audit manager since 2013 and is therefore responsible for ensuring that audits of all processes and in the departments take place? The temporary manager as former / internal audit department head mentions that the IT audit or the need for conducting an IT audit was raised on numerous occasions during the past years, in fact every year, and submitted corroborating emails, etc., memos to that effect to the then management. I believe that it was also mentioned that the decision was not taken at the management level. I have to still find evidence of that. So I've seen the emails requesting, I've seen some responses, but we do not have minutes of management meetings nor of supervisory board of directors meetings to ascertain exactly where the decision making was stranded nor why. As you know, one of the main reasons it would have to go up for approval is that such an external auditor on the IT would cost more than the amount that the manager is able to sign off on, so it would require decision making at a higher level. Can the chair lady via the supervisory board or the directors or managing board provide to Parliament whether any inzage or whatever, any all reports generated by the cybersecurity firm contracted to resolve the Black Bite attack and issued to GEBE since the time the contract was implemented, even wondering whether it could be ter inzage for Parliament, etc. This is definitely one of the documents that is truly sensitive information, and the company has signed an NDA with NVGEBE. Such NDA, of course, does not include the shareholder. So as shareholder, we have received finally the final report officially yesterday when it was brought to the attention of the managing board that what was submitted on August 2nd was actually a draft from May 24th and not the final version, which was issued on June 14th. So I cannot say, I have started to peruse the final draft and it raises more questions, which of course we have to ensure that we get an IT specialist to concur and confer with on the results of said report. And as such, I'm not in a position to go further into what can be shared. There is a non-disclosure agreement, and I believe the company was further admonished by legal to ensure that they do not share it with any third parties and to refer any requesters for said information to NVGEBE. That in and of itself is deeper than I care to go into in the public forum, and so further discussion on this point, Madam Chair, can be had behind closed doors. Take note of that. Another company, in the meantime, to update, NetPro Curaçao was hired to do the external monitoring and external backup monitoring 24/7. NVGEBE is also currently doing an offline backup manually to ensure that no access can happen to that key data. So that's being done on a weekly basis, and regular online backups, of course, take place on a regular basis throughout the day. What we have noted, Madam Chair, and maybe I can put this forth as well, that though sometimes such reports confidentially cannot be shared in its entirety, to a request also made by Parliament about another report from a different government-owned company, the general shareholders meeting agreed that a summary of the report would be prepared that could be shared with Parliament. So that is also an option. What, if any, recommendations and solutions have GEBE implemented, this is question 3, since April 2022 to strengthen their security infrastructure and protect against future attacks and breaches? The answer received from NVGEBE is that the risk management strategy of the company following the ransomware attack was to employ a specialized cybersecurity service provider, as I mentioned before, after I assume the contract ended with Aurora Infotech. NetPro was hired to assist with the specialized cybersecurity monitoring services and backup services. This option strategically was aimed towards mitigating cybersecurity risk by strengthening the IT infrastructure and to share the risk with the cybersecurity service provider. The rest of the information requested related to the SCADA network, I will give a bit global, if I may, Madam Chair Lady, based on the fact that the pertinent information to corroborate what has been informed by NVGEBE, based on the report that we can finally say is official, needs to be perused as well. What I can say is for the public, SCADA is the supervisory control and data acquisitioning, the systems that monitor the generators of the power plant, the distribution system at the substations, and it is on a different network, I can confirm that, and not connected to the data network or to the internet, and as such was not affected by the hack. The system, because it does not need to run online, is not susceptible to ransomware type attacks. The one at the power plant and the substations were also not affected as they run on a completely different system. The report mentions something very, very technical, which prior to coming in, I tried to ascertain with the IT persons at GBE, but I can't say I am satisfied with the explanation given. And so further elucidation as to exactly how that separation of systems works, with your indulgence, Madam Chair, behind closed doors with an IT specialist in the room, I would prefer to then share that information. Of course, once I have that information. So since they are on a different network and not connected to the internet, questions 5 and 6, I think have been answered also. These systems are completely isolated. And it's not, the question 6 mentioned, is it now isolated? As far as GEB's answers, they said it has been isolated from the get-go, which is why they were not part of the attack. The question related to the cyber insurance policy is one of the recommendations that I know for sure came forth out of the first assessment, and I am still awaiting confirmation of that being done, and not just confirmation by word of mouth, but proof of such. So that one is one that will be deferred, Madam Chair. Is GB's network today being monitored and managed 24/7 by a cybersecurity firm? I believe I mentioned that in a previous question, as well as which, and what type of threat monitoring has been deployed to detect and deploy incoming attacks. According to the IT department, as part of the updated measures, NVGB's network is monitored 24/7, managed by a reputable security firm, cybersecurity firm, NetPro Curaçao, as was mentioned, and NVGEBE is of the opinion that this recourse is in the best interest of the company and can assure that this is in place. However, due to the confidential nature of the information, more cannot be divulged, and I must say more has been requested on this company, the contracts, the method, etc., as well as the reasons why the move was made from Aurora Infotech to this company. In question hour of June 10th, in OV17, the Minister of Romy responded to two of the members' questions in the affirmative, that they were in line with IT and cybersecurity best practices, and that the staff were being trained to improve their technical abilities and knowledge base with regards to these best practices. The MP would like to know what best practices have been deployed and how the trainings have been implemented, what trainings have been provided and completed since April of 2022. NVGEBE's internal controls to mitigate the cybersecurity risks have been significantly improved, Madam Chair, as per their report since the cyber attack. In addition to this, NVGEBE is employing a specialized, I mentioned this already, provider, cybersecurity provider, which is monitoring and managing the internal controls and procedures required to mitigate the cybersecurity risk to an acceptable level. Trainings have been offered to the IT, whereby they have earned, the staff, the entire staff in IT has earned cybersecurity certification some 2 weeks ago. Planning is also in place to continuously upgrade the general staff in being able to recognize IT threats, also via the email, and in responding to other actions that they take while on the web. So weekly, the IT department sends out reminders, etc., to look out for certain phishing emails. If there were to be a repeat ransomware attack today, what would that look like for NVGEB in terms of response, recovery, and return to full operational capacity? Management at this time, Madam Chair, believes that following the experience gained from the March 17th event, from which they are yet to recover, that NVGEBE is currently better prepared to respond adequately in the event of another threat. Also mentioned in one of the reports we read was that once you've been attacked, it is sometimes you're susceptible to more attacks, so they're aware of this and have stepped up immensely their security measures. They now, as I mentioned, have regularly weekly offline backups. NVGB's risk is limited, therefore, in the event of a hack or such, to 1 week loss of about maximum 1 week of data, depending, of course, on when the last update happened when the hack takes place. So, for instance, if the update takes place on a Wednesday and the event takes place on a Friday, then they would have only lost 2 days. So the amount of days from the last update with a maximum of 1 week loss. And there's now a set protocol in place as to what needs to be done to ensure return to full capacity in the shortest possible time. At the same time, The management of NVGEB realizes that in today's volatile global environment, it's more important than ever for organizations to have a business continuity management process in place and develop a business continuity plan. I think most of us have that for disaster in terms of natural disasters, but this happening that has taken place some years ago, also with government of St. Martin, puts you in a position now to also be prepared at this level. Consequently, besides the existing hurricane contingency plan, management is also moving towards the implementation of said business continuity management process in order to ensure the following objectives. One, protect business viability and revenue streams. Two, maintain communication with customers, employees, and others when primary communication lines are down. Three, continue to service customers. Four, mitigate risk to the core business operations. An extensive explanation was given to those from the council who were privy to the discussions on the answers to these questions in terms of the steps that now are in place in terms of what is done by the NVGEB. Again, those steps that are part of their response plan after any type of attack, I prefer to share with the members in a closed setting. Madam Chair, before going to the next MP's question, may I request a short adjournment of 5 to 10 minutes?
For sure. I will adjourn the meeting for 10 minutes. Prime Minister, meeting adjourned for 10 minutes. Welcome back, members of parliament. We just took a brief adjournment, a necessary adjournment, and I would like to now turn the floor over to the Prime Minister for the continuation of the answering of questions that was posed by members of parliament in the first round. Prime Minister, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair, for allowing that much-needed break. I go now to the questions of MP Emmanuel, who said he would like to see the contracts that were signed with a temp agency, with the new temp agency, and all contracts that GEBE has signed with all job agencies thus far to this date. Madam Chair Lady, again, such contracts fall within a non-disclosure agreement between the vendors and NVGEBE. I have requested to receive said documents. I have not received them as yet. Again, once they've been received, all of the documents, because again, I mentioned there's quite some information requested that have a non-disclosure nature that we as general, as a shareholder will have to, in a general shareholders meeting, determine what and how said information will be shared. That is as per the regulations. So I just needed to confirm, not regulations, but legislation basing on corporate governance and the relationship between the different entities, levels, parliament, government, and the third parties of government-owned companies. So again, I've requested the information, and I will, after meeting in the general shareholders, we will determine how that will be shared. Is that better? The Member of Parliament, Emmanuel, further asked, and all of the rest questions are from the member, whether the temporary manager with executive management called a meeting with the executive management team directly after the hack. If yes, if no, the member would like to know why not. Based on the detailed report, as I mentioned, was in the status update sent via email on the 2nd of August by the temporary manager. It included events after the cyber attack. It did not specify meetings as such or dates. This will be requested, but there were meetings held. I cannot say what amount. And there were also meetings held with the supervisory board, prosecutors, and representatives of the Ministry of the FROMI. How many meetings? Again, I do not have that answer, and I've been requesting that in writing, so I would need not just there were 3 meetings or 4 meetings or 5 meetings, but proof that said meetings took place. I can concur that I have heard some alarming things as to the lack of meetings as well, but of course that I would need to have proven, so I am awaiting the proof of whether such meetings were held or not. Did the temporary manager visit the various departments in order to understand the effect on the organization? I did not receive an answer to that question, and will revert back when I come with the other answers to that one. I must say that the temporary manager was called out of our review meeting yesterday due to some other ongoing issues that required her attention, which we did excuse her for, so a couple of answers that required her elucidation were not able to be had. What was Aurora Infotech's role after the attack? After the attack, Aurora Tech was hired and arrived 3 days after in person, but was assisting virtually from the following day, I believe, with the following: a specialized forensic cybersecurity service aimed to review the encrypted files and assist with threat intelligence, protecting the system. 2, specialized managed IT, security and support services, and cloud-based recovery services. This was the intention. In addition, the Member of Parliament asked, who is Aurora Infotech? Aurora Infotech is a company specialized in IT cybersecurity, which provides the following services: managed IT services, cybersecurity services, data backup and recovery, and other related IT services. The member further asked whether GEBE can give a breakdown of the details of this company. Other than that, what was publicly found about the company, and due to the non-disclosure agreement, that information was not available to us as yet. Of course, we are not blocked from any NDA, so we have requested the contracts, etc., but have not yet received such. How much did Aurora Infotech charge GEBE for the services? I won't say for data recovery, and was any data recovered? I won't read a question that way because that's not what they were hired to do. There was a second company hired for the data recovery. So Aurora Infotech contract, I have not been privy to thus far, and it also falls within the NDA. And to clarify, the other company, Fast Data Recovery, is a company registered in Australia, which was used to recover / decrypt the data. And from preliminary reports we received, so back in June, I believe, don't quote me in terms of the date, but more than a month or two ago, we were told that they were up to 80% finished, and when we were updated that they decrypted it, and then on the 19th we were updated that that was the first phase, and the second phase, which requires then being able to sync with the existing data, proved to be much more challenging, and that's as far as it went. So therefore, the decrypted information was not rendered usable to date. As a matter of fact, on the 19th, we were updated that management at the time took the decision to halt the process with Fast Data Recovery. For further information as to the details, again, this would only be able to be divulged behind closed doors. The details that have been shared thus far, which again, when you have meetings, Madam Chair, people say things, you can write it down, you can take minutes, but for me, I would like to see the actual corroborating evidence of everything that has been divulged before we even come to a point where we're meeting about it here at Parliament level. So I ask your indulgence for that. Did GEBE submit for 3 quotations? For any other cybersecurity, this is question 9 as registered by us, of any other cybersecurity companies according to internal procedures, or did they outright award Aurora Infotech the job in resolving the matters? Right after the attack, Madam Chair, realizing the seriousness of it, there was no time to conduct a full procurement procedure. Research was done to search for possible service providers, and NVGBE contacted multiple, let me read exactly what he said, specialized service providers before deciding to contract Aurora Infotech. That is the answer I've been provided. And being that it was a crisis, the procedure was shortened. And the why would be because of the special circumstances surrounding a security attack. The first day especially is very, very important to start doing something, or it lopes up, as you would say. In order to gain an understanding of the exposure and limit the extent of the operations disruption, it is vital for the company to respond as quickly as possible in understanding and addressing the root cause of the problem that they were facing. That would be the reason why. And I think that's reasonable. Did GEBE have an existing contract, or did? Madam Chair, can I have clarity on this? No? It's okay. So if they have an existing contract at this moment, no, the contract between Aurora Infotech and GEBE was terminated. Was Aurora Infotech paid in full for the work performed? If yes, how much? Of course, this information is yet to be provided to shareholder, but cannot be shared in this setting as to what was performed. And what I can confirm is the parameters of the contract were not fully completed, and based on the correspondence I have seen, it was on the initiative of Aurora Infotech that the contract was ended. What improvements did Aurora Infotech make to the IT infrastructure? Member of Parliament Emmanuel asked, for the period of its contractual agreement, Aurora Infotech re-established the cybersecurity policies and procedures required to mitigate further cyber risk and brought it to an acceptable level. This is the response as received. Further delving into the report of Aurora Infotech, however, can more than likely reveal more information than has been provided here, and I reserve the right to elaborate on that question at a later time. Why wasn't the IT department audited over the past decade was question 14. Based on the risk assessment prepared by the internal audit department, the importance of conducting an external independent IT audit, as I mentioned, was raised numerous times and recommended also by the external auditor throughout the past years. However, this assignment was never approved by management for execution at the time prior to the hack. Question 15. Did the internal audit department conduct an internal investigation following the cyber attack on the IT department? Cybersecurity investigations require specialized knowledge, qualifications, and experience, which is difficult to employ within an internal audit department. Generally, these services are outsourced, as mentioned before, I believe also by a member of Parliament with such knowledge, and this is done to external service providers specialized in cybersecurity. This investigation, Madam Chair, is to be conducted by, according to our decisions and agreement with Supervisory Board, by a crisis team which forms part of the action plan as requested by the shareholder, to be executed and monitored by an external independent representative. Question 16, is the internal audit department auditing the company financials based on the present financial situation? As I mentioned before, it is conducting its annual audit plan, which the information technology audit is being outsourced. It is currently in process. It was tendered. Meter readings and revenue process and financial management process is part of their scope of tasks to be executed. Why wasn't the SAP system upgraded according to the recommendations received from PwC and imposed by the former management team? Answers provided by GEBE states as following. GEBE has been aware for the last few years that they require upgrading to the latest SAP version. This was indeed proposed by the former management, but never approved by the then Supervisory Board at the time. This was estimated to cost approximately 6 to 10 million guilders, and the reason for the lack of approval at that time is not known. So that is information we are seeking which we expect to get from the minutes of said meetings, hopefully. Did the internal auditor block the system upgrade with the former supervisory board of directors? If yes, why? I think I mentioned that the former supervisory board did not approve it. I cannot go into the details of what role the internal auditor may have played, except to see that there were several requests from internal audit department to management to have this done. So I cannot state based on what I have seen that this is the case, and also at the end, it went up to the level of the supervisory board and was not approved. So I don't know how this question can be connected. I don't know how the allegation within this question can be connected and or proved. Also, just to clarify, the internal audit, according to internal auditing standards, the internal audit department must establish a risk-based plan to determine priorities of the internal audit activities consistent with the organization's goals. Internal audit has an ongoing responsibility to evaluate its effectiveness and contribute to the improvement of risk management arrangements within NVGEBE. This is also information, Madam Chair, for the record that the crisis team will have to investigate. For clarification, also, the SAP upgrade, SAP, and the hack are two completely different things, though one can influence the other. In general, upgrading the SAP ERP systems is not the same as responding to the reliability of the IT infrastructure against cyber threats. IT controls are responsible for cybersecurity, for backup, and for recovery. Hacks, as we know, can happen regardless to the quality of the SAP. However, when timely upgrades take place, they have a positive effect on your recovery. So, when timely upgrades do not take place, it of course negatively impacts and affects the time to recover said data, the quality of the data that can be recovered, as well as the compatibility, as we learned with our recent challenge, to the updated systems once it is recovered. This was indeed the case with the Black Byte ransomware hack, which occurred in March. So I'm hoping that I clarified that. The decryption took place, but what information is recovered is from an older version than what now exists. So the compatibility to get it to mesh with the other information, which there's a lot of cross compatibility that is required with the many systems that GEBE has, rendered it almost impossible to do based on the lacking in upgrades. As the system was outdated, though it was decrypted, the process to synchronize the data would prove to be tedious, time-consuming, and have no guarantees of success. If NVGEBE had upgraded the SAP system prior to the ransomware attack, the company would have indeed been able to better recover its data, and it would have happened at a faster rate and been more user-friendly. Question 19, how much did this cyber attack cost NVGEBE thus far versus the proposed upgrade to the SAP? The cost of again, I made the explanation prior that we understand the attack and the SAP is two different things. But of course, seeing that it wasn't upgraded, the costs, the time, has an effect. So the cost cannot be accurately ascertained at this time. Based on information from the IT department, they have an annual budget of $250,000 per year, which would last throughout the year for whatever they need to do. However, based on what has been spent thus far, you can see they're close to running out on that budgeted amount, and so they expect that it will go up beyond the $250K. This will also form part of the investigation. The delay in collecting revenue, of course, is currently costing NVGEBE. However, as it is aware of receivables and is busy with the recovery of said receivables, it is a temporary loss of revenue and not, for instance, loss forever. So once ascertained, this can be, yes, there may be some loss of data which can be verified, a small amount. However, everything is being done according to the old school methods, apparently, to ensure that all information is properly synced. And many, many man hours have gone into this from the NVGEB employee side. So once we are able to get all of the costs related to what this hack has meant for NVGEBE, this will be prepared to be shared with the shareholder, and subsequently, as I mentioned before, determine in what way it can be shared publicly. Will GEBE be upgrading the current SAP system to a more safe and secure platform? Again, it is not the platform but the program. The SAP is an application program. Cybersecurity is different from SAP upgrades. The IT department recommends the upgrade of the SAP application, as this would indeed support the internal operations, standard schedule backups, etc. Those things are inherent within the SAP, and then would then free up the staff from having to do the upgrades, the updates, and the backups themselves, and minimize downtime in the event another hack should happen. So of course, that's the recommendation, and that's the direction we aim to go, that GEBE aims to go. Why did GEBE not go back to the old collection system rather than leaving their doors closed for almost 3 months? And who made the call for GEBE to remain closed? This, Madam Chair, was one of the resounding and repeated queries from the shareholder to NVGEB, in whether it was a full shareholders meeting, whether it was a meeting, a ministerial third-party meeting, whether it was a casual conversation, whether it was whatever. In every communication, at every opportunity, NVGEB was advised to make it possible for payments to take place, specifically from our Minister of Finance, who highlighted that if people get into the habit of not paying for 3 months, not everyone has the opportunity to save in the manner that others may, and with the cost of living rising, people will utilize funds to be able to survive. So therefore, make it possible. However, NVGB stuck by their guns and were very reluctant to do so. In fact, they were able to procure a memo, which I mentioned, that gave them advice that there were risks involved, etc., and so they felt with that advice that they could continue, and here we are today. So they consulted internally as well as with external specialists, who determined that working outside of the SAP would have posed a significant risk of human error as well as information security. Therefore, this method was not utilized by the temporary management at the time. The risk associated with lost revenue was highlighted by the shareholder. However, in my opinion, management underestimated the time needed to recover the data according to their plans. B, by reverting then to the manual inputting of old data which also has the risk of human error, which we are taking note of at this moment. So for me, the risk of the financial peril down the line should have outweighed the risk that was perceived at the time. And I guess for management now, hindsight is for them 2020. And I said temporary management at the time was Mr. Temmer. Does GEBE have any outstanding payments to Salt-Antilles? If yes, what are those outstandings? I'm not going to be able to divulge what exactly is owed at this time. I do know that GEBE has a plan in place with Sol, where they are defraying their outstandings. And as one of the biggest creditors, we must ensure that they can secure or that they have secured the financing to this very key sector within our community, as any default in this area would definitely leave us all in the dark. All efforts are being made to continue to make those payments. Of course, management's concern about going below their reserves is a going concern. However, I think it is more, just like back then, the risk of not meeting those needs and running in the dark is a bigger risk than not having sufficient funds during a hurricane. So that has been shared with management, and I trust that they are working diligently to ensure that they can continue with their line of credit with Sol. Present financial situation, does it still have 50 million? I believe I answered that already. And I believe that the past week of frenzied payments by the community have increased their revenue somewhat. And what I can say is, though I did not agree with the method that would use the scare tactics that have been used, I do applaud all those who have come forward and live up to their responsibility to pay for the services that they have received. And I implore all to ensure that they continue to do so. Whether you have received a bill or not, I think it is imperative that we continue to pay for the service that we have that has not been cut to date, in order to ensure, of course, that GEBE remains financially viable to pay the going monthly vendors required to keep not just the lights on, but the necessary maintenance in the operations as well, to avoid any fallouts that can occur. Due to the ongoing financial situation, what measures were taken internally to curb the effect? The temporary management of GEBE at the time resolved to a number of decisions meant to improve the financial position of NVGEBE, including but not limited to, and this is again provided by the company. So with that disclaimer, cost-cutting measures, constraining the expenditures, restricting capital improvements, excluding planned maintenance and planned overhaul. This needs to be verified, of course. Improving collection efforts, which we see happening of late. Mention is also made in a later question, but I think I'll mention it here, that NVGEBE has following some Pareto principle of 80-20, whereby 80% of its revenue is generated by 20% of its clients. So the focus should be there to be able to improve. So what was presented to us on the 19th and subsequently was that there were several large vendors that also were in arrears, and so ensuring that those vendors paid up is the strategy that was used, that NVGEB predicts that by the end of September they will be able to back to normalcy. So we're looking forward to that, and again asking all to live up to their responsibilities. Madam Chair, I'm waiting for my system to come back up. Take it off. Madam Chair, a minute for me to regulate this. Please.
Meeting adjourned for 5 minutes. Welcome back, members of parliament. We just took a brief adjournment to allow the prime minister to work on her technical, I think it was. We were having a little technical difficulty, but we're good to go now. So I'd like to turn the floor over to you, Madam Prime Minister, for the continuation of the items.
Question 26 from MP Emmanuel regarding whether the both temporary managers are still collecting their salaries while one is out on sick leave. As this refers to contracts with both parties, I'm not able to divulge that, but I would expect that NVGB would do its due diligence. You cannot pay two people for the same function. It's a temporary, what was very much explained to us from the corporate governance perspective is that a temporary manager and even if somebody's appointed as a temporary manager and cannot execute for whatever reason, then another temporary manager has to be appointed, and that's an acting temporary manager, for instance. So they cannot continue to concurrently and should not, and we will ensure that if that is the case, that it be rectified. And that should be the
Prime
least.
Minister, it
Yes?
seems like we're having some technical difficulties with the streaming of the meeting. Is it the stream? Okay.
From me? I need me to shout? I can speak louder.
1 minute.
It's
My
not-
apologies for that.
Okay,
Proceed.
great. What is the role of the temporary internal auditor? Have any audits been conducted for, or are the auditors being controlled by the acting temporary manager? You asked this question, MP? Okay, so these questions were asked. Again, just like other members of parliament, information also comes to me, and I would like to have the opportunity to follow up on these questions. I cannot go based on allegations, etc. But what I can say about temporary replacements, the Internal Affairs Director or department head was placed as temporary manager. One of the employees, senior employees, is acting, just like in government, acting, and therefore has the rights and the authorities of the manager to do what needs to be done, sign off on reports, etc., etc. So, and they have an independence from the actual organization because they have to assess the processes within the organization. Questions related to the power plant in terms of capacity, excluding 2 generators that are down for maintenance, there is installed capacity of 73.55 megawatts and operational capacity at 67.4, while the requirements are in the low 50s at the moment. So there's more than 15 point whatever megawatts being produced that are being used at peak times. And with all production units being up and running, it would be at 87.45 megawatts with an operational capacity of 75.9. So there's no threat at this moment to not be able to carry the load. If one should go down, of course, there will be a challenge, but it would be able to be maintained. If 2 goes down, then indeed we would have a problem and have to move over to some level of load shedding. The focus on the operational capacity, there's also something that they call black start that is used for blackouts, which comes online as well. So had a very extensive explanation from the power plant manager or senior person, I'm not sure. Manager? Will we be able to meet future demands without immediate investment, seeing the ongoing developments? Planning needs to take place, of course, with the expectation of about 3 major hotels coming online within the next couple of years. That's GEBE's planning and preparation for investments will have to be in line with that, as we will then, of course, have a higher output. The power plant, is it secure in event of another cyber attack? The power plant was never on the internet as such and was never in any peril, was never vulnerable at any point, and was not part of the attack. The reserves were mentioned previously, should be at a minimum at 30 million, and that is there. We're above that, but below where we should be to ensure proper management of the company. So without going into those reserves. So as such, the projections by the company is that they can come back to normalcy at the end of the month if the necessary bills are paid. So if their receivables are up to where it should be, that is expected. And especially to be able to maintain the main suppliers of salt. There was a question about the light poles and a venture between GEBE and the police department. I know, so we're going. So what joint venture is this? Who gave the authorization? Who's paying for this, etc.? Is the data collected? Who's monitoring it, etc.? There's no joint venture per se between GEBE and the police as such, and in terms of a signed agreement. The agreement is between government and GEBE for the light poles, and as an extension of that, GEBE assists with installation and cleaning of the cameras. I'm there, but it's not an agreement with the police, it's an agreement with government as part of their agreement. The venture is part of the Streetlight Management Agreement based on Article 1C, which was signed, as I mentioned before, between the Ministry of ROMI and NVGEBE. All of the monitoring, etc., of the cameras is done solely by the police department, and GEBE has absolutely nothing to do with that. The individuals are employees, and that's based on them having the equipment, etc., to be up and down on these poles. The individuals or employees of GEBE, are they compensated? I believe I mentioned that it falls within the agreement between GEBE and government, so it does fall within their scope of work. Reports, letters, briefings, how many of them have the shareholder received from the old supervisory board and the new supervisory board from January 1, 2020 up till now? Of course, due to time constraints and reasonableness to be able to answer such a question would require the staff to drop everything else to hunt down said information, so I'm not able to provide that at this time. Is government willing to share all these documents for transparency's sake? Again, any and all minutes and letters, reports would require a shareholder meeting to determine whether it can be shared or not. And the requisite 2 weeks to call it, etc. Do the reports, briefings, documentation outline the core issues that are now at the bottom of the apparent functioning within NVGEBE based on when we as a council receive the documents, the day-to-day operations and follow-up meetings with the board? A full assessment of all documents submitted has not yet been finalized, as I mentioned earlier, and we can confirm that the decision to have an external independent investigation executed to be able to render us with an overview of what is, what isn't, what needs to fix, and what we need to do to fix it has been approved, as it is for sure in the best interest of not just the company, but the country at large. Such a report will also outline lessons learned to avoid certain future risks. Any requests as to the questions 37 was about meetings again requested. Again, this is digging into archives, will require some time, Madam Chair. Does the government, in embodiment of its capacity as shareholder, acknowledge responsibility for the current status of this array of NVGEBE? Of course, the shareholder does not shirk any responsibility in the process to hold the supervisory board of directors and by extension the management accountable for the state of affairs at NVGEBE. We are, of course, doing our due diligence in that regard based on the information that is now coming to light. I don't think anyone would expect that as government we are in the day-to-day operations of any of the government-owned companies. Was a shareholder told I'm not sure I understand this question, Madam Chair. So I would like to, we are at number 40. So number 39, I'm not able to respond to because of unclarity. Number 40, was a shareholder informed about the seriousness functioning of the head of the Internal Audit Department? Was a shareholder requested not to stimulate, promote, and/or allow the head of the Internal Audit Department to violate the system of checks and balances, go beyond management and supervisory board to discuss matters directly with the shareholder? Madam Chair, this shareholder in our capacity have not been conducting any of said things. No one would have to advise me or tell me not to do such as representative of the Council of Ministers. And again, any and all allegations being made would have to be corroborated with some level of evidence moving forward for sure. But we do take note of all said allegations. Was a shareholder advised to in detail repeatedly of the capacity of the head internal audit department function as CEO or temporary manager of NVGEBE? Again, let me remind MPs and the public that any information requested by the shareholder must be passed through the Supervisory Board of Directors, and follow-up can and will take place in a crisis situation in a more rapid manner should the information remain outstanding, as we are doing now. So at times, yes, we do have to contact the management directly for certain things, but of course, at all times, we try to maintain the correct channels of communication. How long do we intend to keep the managers on a temporary basis? How long will the screening continue? It is not an intention to keep people on a temporary basis long. The process to negotiate the contracts is with the Supervisory Board of Directors. That took its time, and then the necessary screening needed to take place. With said screening, we know the result of the temporary manager Temer change as of August 22nd, when his letter of no objection was issued, and the CEO's screening is still in process. They are the two temporary managers I have been, and that was what the question alluded to in question 44. Given the state of finances GEBE is in right now, and made a statement it would not cut bills, it would start to cut bills on the 1st of September, can government give an outline detail of how that process is going to work, seeing that many individuals still have not received or up to an up-to-date bill? How will they be cutting people who are not receiving their regular bills? I believe the information produced was for persons who had received a bill, and announcements that I heard via the radio yesterday, even though we had been told internally that there would be no cutting, I heard that that was indeed mentioned yesterday on September 1st, interestingly enough, and that 2 weeks are still needed internally to ascertain. So as people who have received bills, I would just encourage you to ensure that you go and rectify your situation, ensure you log into the portal, get assistance from someone if you're unaware of how to do that, so that you can get immediate updates, as I have been able to do last evening, into what the accounts receivables are for NVGEBE and what you have paid in the interim. Should anything be off, do make contact, whether in person, by phone, or email, to the customer service department. "45, the data that was lost. Can the government of St. Martin request an outline detail of the cost?" I think that question was asked and answered by another MP. Has the government had any discussions with GEBE in terms of cost of value of that data? Again, that would have to be ascertained once we get further along in the investigation, Madam Chair. And that was the last question, as we have recorded from the Honorable MP Emmanuel. And as I mentioned earlier, hopefully when we're able to, I will be able to ascertain after conferring with NVGB as to when I can return to answer the rest of the questions that were asked in round one.
Thank you, Prime Minister, for the answers to the questions posed in the first round. That's not all of it, as you just mentioned. And also, given the time constraint and the fact that we have a meeting in a few minutes, a committee VRAMI meeting, we will then adjourn this meeting until further notice.
Point of order, Madam Chair Lady.
The next meeting is a committee VSA meeting. Yes.
Thank you. Point
Yes,
of order, Madam Chair Lady. Would it not be prudent to give the opportunity for clarifications before you adjourn?
Let me caucus with the
Thank you.
SG. Okay, Prime Minister. We have about we have about 20 minutes, MPs, but if it's a clarification, is it going to be long or is it very short? Very short for you, MP Gumbs. I know you wanted to do some clarification. Prime Minister, are you okay with that? Okay, so then I'll give the floor over to MP Wescot-Williams for clarification, and then we'll move it over to MP Gumbs. MP Wescott?
Thank you very much, Madam Chair Lady, for your indulgence. Madam Chair Lady, I thank the Prime Minister for the answers provided, and I guess it has to do with the way that we pose the questions as well. But in order to get a good feel of the answers, I would need to go over the entire presentation by the government, but that's for my account, not the government's account. Madam Chair Lady, with respect to clarifications, the issue of water storage was answered in terms of it being now at 29 plus 1,000 cubic meters. Madam Chair Lady, I would like to know how that translates into days for storage. I know that the government on previous occasions has indicated that they maintain or they like to maintain a 3-day storage. I would like to know how that amount of cubic meters of stored water, how that translates into days. Madam Chair Lady, the matter, and I will come back to this in my questions because I have totally lost the thread with respect to appointments of statutory directors, assuming office by statutory directors, and temporary managers, etc. Because, Madam Chair Lady, while the Prime Minister was presenting the answers, I was able to take note of an internal memo with respect to the statutory director, Mr. Temer, taking up his duties, one. Then there was some other indication that another person was appointed. I honestly, Madam Chair Lady, I am lost where that is concerned, and thus my question to be clarified by the Prime Minister is, I am in possession of articles of incorporation of NVGEBE going back to 2012, and I want to know, I heard something about an amendment mentioned or an addendum mentioned by the Prime Minister. I want to know if that has to do with the articles of incorporation. If not, could I get an up-to-date set of articles of incorporation? Because I saw one of the members of the board referred to Article 8 in connection with the managing directors, etc. Article 8, sub 11. In the copies of the articles that I have, there is no sub 11. So I just want to make sure that when I ask the questions about managing director, statutory, etc., I am basing it on the current articles of incorporation. And Madam Chair Lady, 2 more questions to be clarified by the Prime Minister based on her presentation. One being the issue of the street lights. When we hear private requests. When we hear private requests, what do I understand under that? Persons requesting a street light? Or, so what do I understand under the Prime Minister's statement? With respect to the street light agreement, what is considered a private request? And then, Madam Chair Lady, I heard the Prime Minister speak of the crisis management team, and a reference was made to it is expected that they will do whatever the Prime Minister then continued to outline. So my question is, in the shareholders' view of a crisis management team that was communicated to the board, and was the crisis management team assigned a specific task based on what the Prime Minister is now saying, that it is expected that the crisis management team will do X, Y, Z. So, with communicating to the board that there should be a crisis management team instituted at GEBE, did the shareholder also give some type of an assignment as to what that team should firstly or generally occupy itself with? Thank you, Madam Chair Lady.
Thank you, MP Wescot-Williams. Next, for clarification, we have MP Gumbs. MP Gumbs, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'll try to be quick about it. Good afternoon to everyone. Madam Chair, just some clarifications to some of the questions that I asked the Prime Minister. The Prime Minister mentioned that the party, I assume Aurora Infotech, was admonished legally from sharing their final report. Can you explain what type of admonishment and who were they admonished from sharing it with, as government is the shareholder of GEBE? Regarding the statement on what has been happening in terms of strengthening the ICT security infrastructure, the Prime Minister mentioned several times that NetPro has been hired, but I do have a question regarding that, because if we consider recent statements made by Aurora Infotech, they terminated their agreement in large part due to the fact that they were not being paid. So is NVGEBE paying NetPro, and how long will they last, considering the relationships with previous companies? And also some clarification on my question regarding the SCADA network and its exposure or vulnerability. The Prime Minister mentioned in a nutshell that it was not at risk. That's essentially what I gathered from the answer. But if I think about how SCADA networks work, and if I think back to last year, you had Oldsmar, Florida, a small town, in February 2021, experienced a ransomware attack on their water plant's supervisory control and data acquisition system, which is a SCADA network. Their water supply was essentially almost poisoned. And that's because SCADA networks primarily run on Windows-based PCs. So is the Prime Minister, via what you receive from GB, saying that the SCADA system has somehow been reconfigured in a way that guarantees it's no longer connected to the power plant? And could the Prime Minister then just clarify that response? Because maybe I didn't understand what officially was stated. And finally, in regards to the question about a repeat ransomware attack, the Prime Minister said that management does believe that NVGEB is better prepared to respond. They have improved their backup infrastructure, sophisticated backup system, etc. But that sophisticated backup system is what was brought down by the ransomware attack in March. So what guarantee did the shareholder receive that it is not the same backup infrastructure that basically crumbled in March? If the Prime Minister could clarify, did they receive some comfort regarding that? Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, MP Gumbs. Prime Minister? You want 1 minute? It's based on questions that was just answers, right? Okay, MP Weever, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair Lady. Good afternoon to you and everyone here. Thank you for the answers so far, Prime Minister. My clarification is just to make sure that the information that is forthcoming from management of the company via the board to Cont and to us is really accurate. Because in my understanding, SAP, or the system, the financial system, was directly connected to the network. SCADA was also partially connected to the network. So it's clarification. It's a clarification, or sort of more of a piece of, or comment, actually, Madam Chair, because there is a difference with being slightly connected and not connected at all, which means that the SCADA network was indeed at threat and at risk. And because of actions being taken, it was kind of sort of avoided, but by saying that it wasn't connected is very misleading. So that's why I want my clarification is to please indeed do get the truth, because the COO of the company was the head of the ICT department. And in addition to the crisis management team, I just want to know who is appointing the crisis management team, if it's a joint effort of the existing SBOD and COM, just a little bit more clarification on what are the qualifications of the crisis management team to come in, just so that we know, because again, my confusion is the same situation that got us here today is the same situation, and the sort of management, it's not, this is a business decision. This is never ever personal when it comes to my assessment of a business. So that's why I'm asking, please clarify who is in charge of appointing the crisis management team, because hopefully it would be objective and independent persons that were not involved already. That's what I want to know. Thank you very much, Madam Chair.
Thank you, MP De Weever. Is there any member of parliament that wish to have the floor for clarifications? No? I see no need. I'll turn the floor over to you, Madam Prime Minister, for the clarifications.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, members of parliament, and I understand your following meeting, but indeed, I think the questions are valid, the clarifications also requested are valid. Some of them I would have to come back with. What I want to clarify specifically, though, that the whole SCADA, some say SCADA, some say SCADA, they told me SCADA was it. Anyway, it doesn't matter to me. I needed to be explained specifically what that was. And as I mentioned, NVGB's answer did not jive with what I read in the report, and I said that. And that needs to be verified for me from an IT perspective. So just before coming in here, I did speak with IT, and they said, yes, what is being mentioned in the report is partially true. However, it still did not put the system at risk. So that further explanation I wasn't able to have prior to coming into the meeting. And so based on the information that I do have, the recommendations that I see in this report, I needed to be properly reviewed by an IT specialist and broken down, because a lot of the jargon in there is basically IT jargon. And so I think that as a council of ministers and shareholder, we need a complete understanding of the report, which again, I reiterate, we only received the final version of officially yesterday. So what was sent to us on August 2nd was a draft from May 24th. They had the final version from June 14th, and this is what we received. And another point I wanted to ensure that is clear before this meeting is adjourned today is that the crisis team will most definitely be an independent external team. And the details of how it will be established, I prefer to not share this time, as we are still in the process together with the Supervisory Board of Directors to ensure proper due diligence is done. Also, to avoid what we know can come with litigation and the rest. Yes? So the the shareholders' position has always been that it must be an independent team, and it will, of course, must, of course, include a strong IT forensic specialist and financial.
Thank you, Prime Minister, for some of the clarifications. Members of Parliament, as you are aware, we're still in round one.
Oh,
well,
one more thing.
Sure.
Sorry, I think
Sure,
something
Prime
else that I can share right now with MP, through you, Madam Chair, Wescot-Williams, that indeed the articles were upgraded or updated, amended in 2014. So that version would include the articles that are being referred to. And the rest of the clarifications,
Are you able to present us with the updated version?
I will have those sent.
Yes.
Too. And the rest of the clarifications, then I would leave for until I have further information to be able to ensure that, again, just as you, accurate information is being given.
Thank you,
Yes?
Prime Minister.
Thank you.
So, Prime Minister, Madam, members of Parliament, so we are still in round one. We have still answers that has to be given by MP Duncan, MP De Weever, MP Rameau, MP Pontiflet, MP Bryson, MP Peterson, and MP Richardson. I will then, yes, we still have some answers to receive by the questions posed by those MPs. So for now, we will now adjourn the meeting to allow the Prime Minister some time to answer, to receive the answers for these from these other MPs. Meeting adjourned until further notice.